Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're talking about one of the biggest turnarounds in history. We're going to look at how one young king took a country that was literally about to tear itself apart and turned it into an empire.
So, let's just jump right in. Picture this. It's around 10,000 BCE. And if you're the newly crowned King David, you've got a massive problem. This isn't just about, being in charge. It's about sheer survival. You've got this nation, totally fractured, split right down the middle by loyalty and land. How on earth do you make them one people? It's a huge challenge, so let's break it down.
Okay, so after King Saul dies, the kingdom is, well, it's a total mess. You've got the northern tribes still loyal to Saul's family, and then you've got the southern tribe, Judah, and they've just made David their king. The whole nation is just teetering on the brink of a full-blown civil war. I mean, the challenge facing David is just huge.
And here's the thing you've got to remember. This was not some overnight victory. Not at all. David had to play the long game. For seven long years, he's ruling just his own tribe of Judah from this city called Hebron. Can you imagine the patience? It's all about political strategy, waiting for the right moment. And then finally, it happens. The northern tribes come around, and at 30 years old, David becomes king of all Israel.
Now, David was a brilliant strategist. He knew that to hold this fragile alliance together, he couldn't just rule from his hometown, his power base in Hebron. I mean, that would basically scream southern takeover to the northern tribes, right? He needed a neutral spot, a political Switzerland, if you will. It's kind of like when two rival companies merge. The smart CEO doesn't pick one of their old headquarters. No way. You find brand new, totally neutral ground to build something new.
And he found the perfect spot. There was this fortress city called Jebus. It was independent, belonged to neither side, and it was sitting right on the border between the north and the south. I mean, perfect, right? Well, there was just one tiny problem. The place was considered absolutely 100% unconquerable.
Yeah, the people living there, the Jebusites, they were so cocky about their defenses, they literally laughed at David. This quote you see, that's them taunting him. They're basically saying, our walls are so good, even our blind and lame citizens could fight you off. Wow. Talk about overconfidence. It's just a classic case of pride coming before a fall, isn't it?
So that begs the question, right? If this place was Fort Knox, how in the world did David's army actually get inside?
Well, the whole mystery might just come down to one single tricky Hebrew word, tsanor. And you can see how different Bibles translate it completely differently. The King James Version calls it a gutter, which makes you think of some kind of frontal assault up the side of a wall. But then the NIV translates it as a water tunnel, which paints a totally different picture, right? Suddenly, it's not a big battle, it's a stealth mission, like a special ops team sneaking in through the city's water supply. Just that one word completely changes how we see this historic event.
Okay, just a quick timeout for a couple of key terms here. Jebusites, that's simple. They were the Canaanite folks who were living in Jerusalem before David showed up. And Millo, this is a word for some kind of structure, probably a big fortification or terraces that David built after he took the city to beef up its defenses. It's important because it shows he wasn't just a conqueror, he was a builder.
So, when you boil it all down, after all the waiting, the strategy, the mystery of the water tunnel, it all came down to this one thing, one city. Taking Jebus wasn't just about winning a battle. No, it was the move. It was about creating the political and, the spiritual glue that could finally hold this divided nation together. And just like that, Jebus becomes Jerusalem, the city of David.
But you know how it goes, right? You solve one massive problem, and another one just pops right up. As soon as David unifies the kingdom, an old enemy comes knocking, the Philistines. They look at this newly united Israel and they see a major threat on their doorstep, and they are not going to just sit back and watch.
And they don't waste a second. The moment they hear David is king over the whole shebang, bam, they attack. It just goes to show you, success often brings a whole new level of problems, doesn't it? This is it, David's very first test as the king of a united nation.
Okay, and this next part is really fascinating. David's reaction here is so telling. Instead of just grabbing his sword and rushing into battle, he does something really important. He stops, and he asks God for guidance. And he does it in two distinct steps. First, he asks the if question. Should I go and attack? He's asking for permission. The answer is yes. But, and this is the key part, he doesn't stop there. He asks a second question, the how question. How should I do it? He's asking for a strategy. And the answer he gets is so specific, almost poetic. Wait until you hear the sound of marching in the treetops. Then you'll know it's time to strike.
And guess what? It works. Perfectly. David wins a huge, decisive victory. And he names the place of the battle Baal Perazim. This literally means the Lord of breakthroughs. He's making it clear, this victory wasn't about me or my army. It was God, breaking through our enemies like a flash flood. That name just perfectly captures that feeling of an unstoppable, overwhelming force, doesn't it?
So that's the story. That's what happened. But the bigger question is, why are we still talking about this? Why is this ancient story of politics and battles captivated people for literally thousands of years? Well, I think it's because you can look at it through so many different lenses, and each one shows you something new.
I mean, think about it. If you were an ancient Israelite reading this, it's clear proof that God is keeping his promises. Simple as that. But then, for the early church, David becomes a type, a prefigurement of Christ who conquers a spiritual Jerusalem. Fast forward to the Reformation, and theologians look at this as a crystal clear picture of God's total sovereignty. And today, modern scholars see a masterclass in political strategy and how to build a national identity from scratch. It's the same story, but you get these 4 completely different and all super insightful takeaways.
So if we boil all this down, what are the big ideas that jump out from the story itself? Well, there are 3 huge ones. First, this idea of divine sovereignty, that God is the one ultimately putting leaders in place. Second, covenant faithfulness. This isn't just a random event. It's the payoff of promises made generations before. And finally, and maybe this is the one that hits closest to home for us, the power of just asking. The story makes it pretty clear that David's success is tied directly to his willingness to seek guidance before he made a move.
And that really just leaves us with one final thought to chew on. You have David, a king, a celebrated warrior, a guy at the top of his game, and he still pauses. He stops to ask for both permission and strategy before facing his biggest fights. It really makes you think, doesn't it? In our own lives, when we're up against our own battles and we're desperately looking for that breakthrough, where do we go to seek our guidance?